Caro George.
George, my dear friend, I'm going to use my own language that I know you speak and understand perfectly well. Allow me, on my behalf and on behalf of Group 3, to congratulate you on your election to the President of the first part of this mandate, and to send you my warmest and most sincere wishes for success and a constructive cooperation with our group. I've known you for 13 years, in fact. You've held posts, and you keep coming back, and you've written a number of reports. One on the cost of non-Europe, one on the European Statute of Parties, and the third and latest under Van Rompuy on the economic and monetary union and the social side of that. That you needed Mr. Van Rompuy to really focus on that side of things. And we're very satisfied to see that some of these ideas have been taken up once again by President Juncker and will be part of the package that Commissioner Thyssen is going to be using for the first part of next year. Now, I know, George, that you will be the best person to interpret the soul and the spirit of this committee. There's an enormous baggage of competences, of skills, of expressions, of civil society throughout Europe, not to mention our industrial and productive tissue. Of course, there are problems ahead, but allow me just to focus on four images. The first image is last Saturday, Lampedusa. For the second year, we've had the Day of Memory to remember the ship wreck in which 378 people perished. And the survivors of that vessel walked in silence along the beaches of Lampedusa, saying, "Protect people, not borders." That was their slogan. 2 years ago, people said, "Never again Lampedusa," but then Lampedusa, then Malta, then Greece. Today, the dimensions of the challenge facing Europe from the south, from the east, from Ventimiglia, through the Balkans, Austria, Germany, up to Finland, France, these have changed our agenda radically. And some people have just wanted to close the borders, others open their arms in solidarity. And Chancellor Merkel said clearly that the Dublin rules are obsolete. They need to be changed. Now's the time for change. The second image is that of Vice President Timmermans, who spoke to the United Nations recently and announced an extraordinary effort by the EU to fight against xenophobia, anti-Semitism, and Islamophobia. To do, because we can see this happening. The crisis, as he said in the interview, has caused a profound split in Europe. And they need to fight against the fear of losing, particularly by the middle classes. And then he talked about the importance of fighting against stereotypes, the growing stereotypes, which can have dramatic efforts. Thirdly, Berlin, last Saturday. 25 years since the treaty for the unification of Germany. Not enough was said about this. It wasn't just a walk in the park. It was something that caused a lot of tension, misunderstanding, fear and resistance. But nonetheless, it's said still today that nobody, no wall, no barbed wire fence can stand in the way of the will of a people to unite, to live in freedom. And this changes the world. It's changed history. And the response of governments to these ideas of closing off, of building fences and building walls, this is solidarity. We're not just talking about the views of the founding fathers. And fourthly, Syria, after a devastating war and years of stalling, President Putin has finally decided to drop bombs. France has decided to. Italy yesterday decided they would also conduct bombing raids. The United Nations seems to be going back to the history before it even existed. Every individual government is now deciding to launch its own battles, its own attacks. Why have I brought these four images to mind? Because the rights, the fundamental freedoms, people fleeing from problems, solidarity, all of these ideas are more than ever at the center of the urgent debate that Europe needs to have and that these organizations of ours need to face up to. And I'm convinced, as the people who spoke before me have said, that we need to bring these back to the heart of our debates, but we need to do more than just talk about it. We need to put all of this into place. We need to move. We need to take decisions, but we need to move forward. Because we mustn't do too little, too late. Because if we could really put into practice what we decide, then our Europe would really change. So, George, you know probably better than I do that the area of participation and debate among the institutions of the economic and social and civic values of our EU is here. And very often in times of crisis, these areas are squeezed out. But we've always been based on representative democracy made of governments and parliaments and participatory democracy. These are the fundamental pillars of our EU. We have treaties, and we are here to really voice this reality. We have an enormous area in our Europe. We want to have our civic voice, the families, the workers, the consumers, cooperatives, professionals, associations, craftspersons. If we don't take on our responsibility, nobody will do it for us. So this area would just be a vacuum, a dramatic vacuum. George, allow me to round off with just a fifth image that concerns your country, an image that was evoked by President Juncker in his speech on the Union in Parliament. The Greek island of Kos, which is once again at the heart of news stories, the dramatic story of refugees. An old entrepreneur who'd moved to Australia to flee from hunger. He now has a bakery. He produces bread, and he said, I just want to help. Every day he's produced 100 kilos more of bread and takes it down to the port and gives it to the refugees arriving. There are thousands of people in Europe who are doing this. They do their job well and they help citizens to live better. and we need to give a voice to that Europe, that positive Europe, the Europe of hope, a Europe of the future. And I hope very much that we will be able to do this. And I'm sure under George, under your leadership, we'll manage to achieve that. Thank you.